appreciate that. That's really good. We'd like to call this meeting to order, the audit committee meeting on April, it's not April 25th, it's July 25th. So it's now called to order. This meeting has been properly noticed and posted and complies with the open meeting law. We'll go to the public comment portion of our meeting. So public comments during this portion of the agenda must be limited to matters on the agenda for action. If you wish to be heard, please come forward at this time. Give your name for the record. The amount of discussion, as well as the time of any single speaker is allowed, may be limited. No one coming forward? Then we'll move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is discussion for possible action on the audit of the municipal court house arrest. We will now hear that report from Gary Phillips, Senior Internal Auditor.
Good morning, Gary Phillips, Senior Internal Auditor, City Auditor's Office. Today I'm reporting on the audit of the municipal court's house arrest unit. The municipal court's house arrest unit oversees offenders sentenced to house arrest instead of jail. Court marshals conduct unannounced home and work site visits while defendants are monitored 24 hours a day by electronic equipment, and offenders make payments to the court or by phone. Payments are processed in the court's case management system. The audit objectives were to evaluate the adequacy of existing documented policies and procedures, determine if payments were processed in accordance with existing policies, determine if management and system controls exist to safeguard against theft and unauthorized changes to court records, determine if house arrest vendor was charging the court appropriately and vendor invoices were being reviewed for accuracy, determine if house arrest unpaid fees were being adequately monitored. Finding 1, we found the documented house arrest references, materials, and procedures needed to be formalized as court business processes. Some reference documents were more than 7 years old. The recommendations for finding 1 is that the house arrest management should create formalized procedures for the house arrest unit. These procedures should address all aspects of the operations of the unit. Finding 2, while the house arrest payments are being processed in accordance with policies, there are no signage alerting the customers to the right to a receipt. No alternative phone numbers displayed of an employee independent of the court specialist for customers to contact with questions or concerns regarding payments. No regular review of payment transactions by someone other than the court specialist. No surveillance camera at the house arrest customer service window. Recommendations for finding 2 is for house arrest management to display signage informing the customers of the right to receipt, display the phone number of an alternative employee of the court specialist for customers to contact in case of payment concerns, perform regular reviews of house arrest transaction reports from the court management system, install the surveillance camera over the customer service window, which has been done during this audit. Finding 3. Finding 3, we found that the current court management system has querying and reporting limitations that require the court specialist to duplicate information already in the court management system on Excel spreadsheets to track the status of house arrest defendants. We recommend that the house arrest management share the information currently maintained on the Excel spreadsheet with those involved in the development of the new court management system, eCourt. Evaluate the completeness and accuracy of the defendant's status spreadsheet so it can be periodically and independently reconciled to the court management system. Finding 4. Finding 4, we found various deficiencies with the monthly vendor invoice review and reconciliation process. We found that the court specialist's review of the monthly invoice is insufficient to identify all potential billing errors. Recommendations for finding 4 for house arrest management to document and implement improved procedures to be performed by the court specialist for reviewing the completeness and accuracy of a vendor invoice. Document and implement a supervised review procedures to be performed following the review of the invoice by the court specialist, and formalize the invoice review procedures as a house arrest business process. Finding 5, we found that the prices being charged for services and equipment on the vendor's invoices are not reflected in the current contract. Our recommendation is for house arrest management to work with the vendor and the city's purchasing and contract division to amend the existing vendor contract to reflect current prices for services and equipment. House arrest participants sign an agreement prior to entering into the house arrest program. Violations letters are sent out monthly on house arrest participants who have not complied with their financial obligations. In finding 6, we found various deficiencies in the violation letter process and the contents of the letter. We recommended that house arrest management fully develop, document, and implement procedures for preparing the house arrest violation letters by addressing the issues identified within this audit finding. Document and implement supervised review and approval procedures of the violation letter preparation procedures, and evaluate the adequacy of the current violation letter and ensure the verbiage coincides with that of the participation agreement. Court management has been very supportive of our audit recommendations and have provided responses to our recommendations at the back of the report. I'd like to thank the court management for their help in this audit. And Mr. Dana, the back court administrator, is present to respond to any questions you might have on this audit.
Okay. Thank you. Dana, good to see you again.
Chair Henry, thank you. Committee members, it's a pleasure to be here once again on a different audit.
Right, exactly.
I've been told we're actually not going to discuss the old audit because it's not
We're not
there
talking
anymore.
about
So,
Okay. So you just said very supportive, and you said you're very happy to be here. So,
it's absolutely true.
So tell us a little bit about this audit and your feelings, your real feelings.
Thank you, Chair Henley. Again, Dana Levac, Municipal Court Administrator. This was actually a very useful process. It was somewhat drawn out, but I don't think that was solely because of the audit or Mr. Phillips' activities. And we had a lot of refinement to continue to do, a lot of things that we had to gather to make sure he had the appropriate information. There's no question that our process and procedures need to be better formalized. The processes are there, but there's nothing that we can check them against to say, yep, you're doing it exactly the way you're supposed to under a process and procedure. That is underway. A lot of the information that you talked about in terms of data and sharing that with the eCourt configuration team, that has been done, so they are developing eCourt so that those reports and those cross-reference checks can be made available. A lot of the recommendations have already been implemented. All of the signage recommendations have been done. The sharing of data has been done. The only recommendation that we I guess, differ on is reference to violation letter. There was a recommendation. We did have the verbiage now coincides with the agreement that the defendant signed. However, in terms of placing a senior management, and the initial recommendation, although it's not stated, was that my signature block appear on there. We don't believe that's appropriate because from there, nobody has a place to go with any of their complaints. So we continue to put the court specialist signature in that block, but have added a line saying if you have any issues, here's the next person you call, and that's the supervisor of that court specialist. And from there are 2 levels of appeals that an individual can continue to take if they have continuing issues. We feel that's a better process because it allows the individual defendant a path to try to resolve unresolved issues. Other than that, we agree with all the recommendations. We're taking steps to implement those recommendations. We have provided estimate date of completion. Some of those are done. Some of them will rely on the eCourt go-live date, which I'm now firmly, mostly convinced will be on or before July 1st of 2019. We had some issues between our internal processes and the vendor processes, but I think we've got those ironed out. And I'm free to answer any questions anyone from the committee or management may have.
I was going to ask when the Death Star was going to be fully operational, so I'm glad you brought that up, so I didn't have to ask. But I will open it up to any other questions anybody might have.
No additional questions.
Just, Mr. Chair.
Yes. State your name for the record, please.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Gentlemen, city auditors. I just wanted to let you know that as far as the one item that we're, as Mr. Black referred to, that we don't exactly see 100% eye to eye on, but then we're going to continue to work with them closely, and hopefully we'll be able to find a middle ground, and if that's the case, why then we'll move forward with that and make a recommendation when we come back in order to accept whatever it is they do. We'll be working with them on trying to resolve that issue.
Mr. Chairman Headley, I appreciate you, Brad, working with them on that because we bring up a finding. You bring up a finding, and it is a living, breathing process. So as you collaborate together, the auditor might have one suggestion, the operations might be doing another thing, but together you can come up with a third alternative that's probably better. And as long as both parties are agreeable to that, I think the committee is also agreeable to that, and we appreciate the collaboration. That's how we're going to make things better here at the city. So appreciate your hard work, the work of your auditors, and of course, Dana, the work that you put in, and everyone in your department as well for the cooperation. I really wanted the honesty, so I appreciate that, because sometimes people do not welcome the auditors in with open arms, and so it's nice to see that there is that cooperation through the different departments. So again, kudos to you and your department. I think this is a great audit. I think this is great findings, and you are taking these seriously, and will continue to resolve these issues.
Thank you, Chair. I wish I could say they were totally open arms, but they were a little open. There was some resistance among staff, but Mr. Smith and Mr. Phillips from the auditor's office were very patient with the resistance that we did have initially in the audit. And I think we got things on the track, particularly in the last 6 months of the audit, and they did an excellent job. And I appreciate Rad's support as well.
Okay. Do I have any?
We'll make a motion to accept the audit report and management response.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you, sir.
Let's move on to agenda item number 5, discussion for possible action regarding the update to the audit recommendations for the status of incomplete. So we'll now hear that report from Brian Smith, our internal audit section manager.
Good morning, Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. As you can see on this slide, as of the January 24th Audit Committee meeting, when we last discussed incomplete audit recommendations, there were 30 incomplete audit recommendations and 11 not due recommendations. And if you recall, the reason that a recommendation is not due is because the estimated date of completion provided by management had not yet passed. Since the January 24th Audit Committee meeting, an additional 47 audit recommendations were issued from 3 different audit reports, including the Animal Control Report, the City Clerk's Office Records Management Report, and the Municipal Court House Arrest Report. And also, during that same period, there were 24 recommendations that were completed. As of today, we have 25 incomplete recommendations and 39 not due recommendations. And out of the 30 audit recommendations that were incomplete as of January 24th, only 9 of these recommendations are incomplete as of today. And those recommendations are from the Office of Cultural Affairs Artist Contract. I'd now like to review the 25 incomplete audit recommendations and give Department of Management the opportunity to give you an update on their efforts to address these recommendations. The 25 incomplete audit recommendations as of today include 8 recommendations from the Municipal Court House Arrest Report, which we were just briefed on. And the Municipal Court has already identified these 8 recommendations as being complete, but we have not yet begun our completion verification process on these 8 recommendations. Therefore, for our tracking purposes, they remain incomplete. The next group of incomplete audit recommendations is from the Office of Communications. These 8 incomplete audit recommendations are all from the audit of the print shop and mailroom operations report issued in June 2017. You'll see on this slide a date with each recommendation, and that is the estimated date of completion that management gave us prior to the release of the report. James Burnett is currently working with the Office of Communications to verify completion of these recommendations, and Diana Paul, Public Affairs Manager, as well as David Riggleman are here to present, to give you an update on the status of these recommendations.
Ready for us now?
Yes.
Morning, everyone. For the record, I'm Communications Director David Riggleman, and this is Public Affairs Manager Diana Paul. Brian is spot on. We've submitted everything related to the things that are incomplete here. The issue really that has prevented James from being able to go through and verify the completion of all of these stems with some software that we've purchased called WebCRD. That software is being tested now and won't be fully rolled out to the organization for the next couple of weeks to a month. And once the software is in place and we're using it, then James will be able to go back and to verify its effectiveness. In the way of your edification, we inherited this operation from another department, and when we did, it had virtually no automation or project management at all. Orders were submitted by paper, tracked through email, a very inefficient system. It was very hard also to try to determine that this is an internal service fund, so we're supposed to be charging back to the departments the actual cost of the jobs. We didn't really have any tools in place to help us do that. So I called upon RAD at the time for some help. And said it would be great if you could have your auditors jump in here and help us kind of sort through this. And so he did. He assigned Brian and James to the job, and they worked closely with Diana in our office and the team down there, and came up with some great recommendations. Obviously, the new software that we've used, it took us a little longer to pick it and procure it. I think we were a little overzealous on what we thought the completion date would be. Brian warned me, he said, you might want to back this off a few months. But Diana and I, no, we'll be done by July 1st. Well, we're not quite done. We've got everything in place, but getting the software running. So with that, Diana, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add that I've missed, but that's where we are with each of these. And hopefully by the next time you meet in October, James will have had the time or the opportunity to have gone through to verify that all this stuff is working the procedures have all been documented. Diana has done all that. We just haven't had a chance to put the software through its paces to make sure it's going to do what we will it does.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. Did you have any questions or explain?
Any questions? Okay. Good job.
Okay, cool.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Continuing on with the incomplete audit recommendations, the remaining 9 incomplete audit recommendations are from the Office of Cultural Affairs, and all of these relate to the audit of the artist contracts report that was issued in January 2017. A couple weeks ago, I met with Allie Haynes-Hamblin, the Director of Cultural Affairs, and I'm currently in the middle of verifying the completion of these audit recommendations. Allie is here to give you an update on her office's efforts to address these remaining recommendations.
Thank you. I'm Allie Haynes-Hamblin, Director of the Office of Cultural Affairs. And as Brian mentioned, we met recently, so I could walk him through all of the changes that we've made in our department to address not just these audit findings, primarily these audit findings, but also address some overall inefficiencies in our department. The most significant change that we've made that have addressed a lot of the audit findings in one fell swoop was a complete restructure of our department and a restructure of the way that the work flows. In the past, the way the artist contracts were administered through our department is that multiple people throughout the department would generate their own contracts and send them directly to the artist, which meant that there were a lot of inconsistencies in the template that was used, in the follow-up for insurance requirements and payment methods, and whether or not the labor release form was used or not used. And so what we've done is we've centralized that entire function. So every contract that the Office of Cultural Affairs issues for artists goes through one person and one chain of command. So we have somebody who prepares the contract, she sends it to me for review. I review it fully and check off before it gets sent to the artist to make sure that all of the information is accurate, that the template is consistent. And then she also has automated systems, the woman who generates the contract, to follow up on a regular schedule to make sure that we have the insurance requirements in place, that we get the signed contract back in a timely manner, and to make sure that the artist gets paid in a timely manner, and that the artist follows the processes that our finance team requires in order to get paid properly. So that was the most significant change that really satisfied a lot of the audit findings that we had when I first came into the office. That change was fully implemented this past spring, so Brian is looking through all of our records and wants to establish a little bit of time to make sure that that process is working. When we first implemented, we had to make some adjustments to make sure that the process was working as I envisioned it would work. So I think we've got a couple months now of everything working the way it's supposed to, so we can create a track record so that Brian would be satisfied that the new process is well in place.
Okay. For the record, Mr. Chairman Headley, Allie, thank you so much for your hard work. It looks like there's a lot of policy, a lot of procedures, a lot of documentation, and then a little bit of training on the back end that we just got to make sure everyone follows what we do. Any estimate as to the time where you think, as you work with the auditors, when you think these will finally be closed, they'll be complete?
I would estimate this fall, because right now we're really just building up time showing that this is working. Okay. So I think I would look to Brian, but I think probably another 2 or 3 months would be enough time, because we're generating a lot of contracts this fall for the upcoming season. So there'll be, I believe, ample opportunity to see that the process and the new systems that are in place are working as they should, and that we're having consistency in our contracts.
Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. I agree. I've had some great discussions with Allie. It's just a matter of us doing our due diligence at this point. A couple of the issues related to insurance coverage for the performing artists, and there's been a policy that's been created for which artists are going to be covered by a city policy versus those individual performing artists having to have their own insurance coverage. And so we're looking into that policy. We want to make sure that policy is indeed in place, looking at the templates that Allie has put together and making sure those are being used correctly. So just a matter of time of doing our own due diligence to make sure that they're following their new policies and procedures.
Okay. Any questions about the cultural affairs audit? Any follow-up?
No issue.
Okay. If there's nothing, there's no other issues, right, Brian?
No.
Okay. If there's any other further questions on the incomplete audit recommendations, if there's none, maybe we could have a motion.
Make a motion to accept the updated status of the
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear none. Let's move on to item number 6. Discussion for possible action on the annual audit plan for fiscal year 2018-2019 and current audits. We will now hear a report from Brian Smith on this.
Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. As you see in this next slide here, the City Auditor's Office audits on a cyclical 5-year audit plan. Kind of hard to read that slide, but the City of Las Vegas has 13 departments and 6 offices. We plan to audit each of the departments and offices at least once during the audit cycle. This table shows all the city departments and offices and the year when we last completed an audit within that department. We determine the objective and scope of each audit by reviewing the performance measures of the entity and selecting the areas that present the greatest risk exposure. This audit plan allows for substitutions or additions based on mayor and council or audit committee requests. The audit plan allows for time for follow-up on outstanding audit recommendations, investigations, and other miscellaneous activities. By approving this plan, the City Auditor's Office can initiate audits within these departments without having to return to the audit committee to obtain authorization. We currently have 3 audits in process, as shown in the right column of this table, including audits of RDA set-aside funds in the Office of Community Services, the Darling Tennis Center contract in the Department of Parks and Recreation, and the City Marshal's audit in the Department of Public Safety. In looking at this report, you'll notice that the department that has been the longest without having been subject to an audit is the Department of Human Resources. The last audit that was done in there was 2008. And Rev. Snelling, the city auditor, has some comments on that.
Rev. Snelling, city auditor. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'd like to comment on that. That looks like it's well overdue. As you can see, we're pretty close on all the other ones. There have been some things that have come up. We've actually been trying to complete audits on those over the last few years. 2 of them that I can recall that added to this situation where we haven't been able to complete an audit. The first one had to do with a technical problem that we had when we were doing the audit, and we had to suspend the audit on that one. We also had a job open that we were working on a complaint that as we got into it, this was going to be the second one, the most current one, or the last one, and it had to do with as we got into it and reviewed it, we found that the situation just didn't exist, so we didn't move forward with that. This is high on our list, and it's one of the ones that we're going to do an audit in that department this year for certain. And if I could take just a minute to make another comment. Brian was talking about how once you approve this, well, then it gives us permission to move forward on an audit. One of the things that I'd like to say, which I don't think you, Mr. Chairman, or the other members of the committee that are present today had ever really heard this, but it's always been my policy that if we can help the council and answer a question in a reasonable amount of time, we won't schedule an audit, we won't bring it back to you to ask to do it. But if it is a request that's going to take a lot of resources, then what we will do is we'll bring that back to you and let you approve us to do the work on it. I just wanted to give you some background on that. I don't think that's ever been discussed with you all specifically. But that's what I had to add related to human resources, the audit there, and then this other issue related to bringing items back that are requested. And that also, the request also applies to those requests that are going to take quite a bit of time that we receive from the city manager's office or from some other department. So we'll get something in writing, bring it back, and give permission to do it if we anticipate that it's going to be a labor-intensive effort.
Okay. Great.
And that concludes my report.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate the more color that you guys painted as well, because it is important that we hit all the audit areas and the same thing, because we never want to handcuff you guys when you do get a special request from someone. We want to be responsive to those requests. And so I guess that is a very good point that you bring up, Brad, that if it is going to take an extended amount of time, that it will take away from the audit plan as we've kind of generally presented it, that you just let us know. And so, again, appreciate the updates. Any questions about the audit plan that you guys want to bring up?
No questions. And I'll make the motion to accept the audit plan.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it passes. Item number 7, report by staff regarding staffing levels within the Office of City Auditor. And so we'll go ahead and hear that report now.
Brian Smith, Internal Audit Section Manager. Since the last audit committee meeting, we've had some staffing changes in our office. We are happy today to introduce you to the newest member of our audit team, Nancy Cardoza, Nancy.
Yay!
Nancy comes from us. She previously worked for AAA of Southern California and MGM Resorts, working as an internal auditor at both of those organizations. Also, she worked for the accounting firm of RSM. I think it was probably McLeod. Was it McLeod in Poland at the time? We're happy to have Nancy as part of our team. She brings a lot of good audit experience, and we look forward to working with her. Also, on July 2nd, we lost one of our auditors. Nancy Beattie, who had been with our office for over 10 years, retired, and we certainly appreciate the many contributions that she made to our office and the city over those years. As seen on this slide of our org chart, we have 2 vacant positions. As you may recall, we have received approval to hire a senior IT auditor, and we will be recruiting for that position very soon. We're just updating the job description since it's been over 10 years since we've probably updated that description. And also, we are currently recruiting to replace Nancy Beattie, and that posting just went out last week. So we're hoping by the end of August to get an additional auditor on board. And this concludes my report.
Okay. Any questions on this one? Any staffing questions in general?
Nancy, what years were you at McLaren?
Nancy, can you come up here?
Sorry, this is not-
We want to see you a little bit better. And then, since you're new, you need to identify yourself for the record.
For the record, this is Nancy Cardoza, Internal Auditor 2. I was with Gladry for the 2014 to 2016 years.
Okay.
2 years.
I was there in 2008,
Oh,
or
okay.
2005 to 2008. Yeah, so just before. Oh, cool. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Welcome on board.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you, and we know there's a little bit of getting up to speed while you're new, but this is a great opportunity, and again, we appreciate you joining the team. So, welcome. Brian, do we need any motion for this? This is more informal,
You don't.
right?
You don't, Chairman. No.
Okay. So if there's nothing else, let's move on to item agenda number 8. This discussion regarding any future agenda items that the Audit Oversight Committee might want to take up. Comments made during this portion of the agenda by individual members shall refer solely to proposals for future agenda items, and for any discussion shall be limited to whether or not any such proposed items are within the purview of the committee. Anything that you guys want to say, or anything you want to take on in the future discussions?
I just wanted to thank Luann for taking us to the Ark.
Yes.
In between the last meeting that we were here, Greg and I were able to go and visit the Ark, and it was really cool to go and see, meet your staff and see everyone out there. So thank you for taking the time to take us. That was fun.
Yeah, it was absolutely a treat. Enjoyed the whole thing. We got to see some of the nostalgic part of the city, and some of the pictures and some of the archiving things. And if you guys, I don't know if you guys are allowed to go, but
Yes.
it's
We welcome anybody.
It's definitely worth it. It's more than a nickel tour. So it was a wonderful time, and again, thank you.
Thank you,
for
thank
helping
you.
with that and making that happen. I don't think there's anything else that we need. Brian, again,
We're good.
we
You're
don't
good,
have
Chairman.
anything.
You're good. You're in a good
We
mood.
approve it.
Citizen
Nope,
participation.
you're good.
Nothing there. Let's move on to agenda item number 9. This is again for public comment. Anyone else out there that would like to make a public comment at this time? Anyone? Okay. If not, we are adjourned.
Good meeting.